Welcome to the Winden Caves. I'm Bubba.
And I'm Tiny.
And today we're going to be going over Season 2, Episode 7, The White Devil, and Episode 8, Endings and Beginnings. Here in the Winden Caves, we're going to be talking about all the spoilers for all of Season 1, all of Season 2. Tiny, what should people do if they haven't seen the first and second season of Dark on Netflix?
If you don't like surprises, you should keep on rolling in the Winden Caves.
Okay. All right. Tiny, we have got some great double L.
What's double L?
Loyal listener feedback. And we've got new members of the Double T's.
Tiny's time travelers?
Oh, they're triple T's now. You're claiming them for your own, Tiny. How interesting. But before we get to any feedback, before we give our Season 2 segment of our shocking family reveal, Tiny, I think we need to take a stock of where we are in this cave. You have just sat through Season 1 and Season 2 of Dark. What is your thoughts? How are you feeling now that we have at least a year wait until Season 3?
Well, I felt like on Episode 7, I may actually have the characters straight. I know who is who at this point.
Okay, that's good. That seems, I suppose, positive. Are you liking where the story has turned? Are you shocked? Are you upset? How are you feeling after that, I found, mind-blowing end to Episode 8, Endings and Beginnings?
Well, Bubba, it was actually the beginning of Episode 8 that had me reeling, and the biggest surprise of probably the whole series.
What was that, Tidy?
Elizabeth, I think you said it best. Elizabeth is her own grandmother. How could this be possible?
Bootstrap paradox, Tiny. And it felt like at the most 60 seconds into the final episode, we get the reveal of Charlotte's mother. Charlotte's mother is her daughter, Elizabeth. Holy smokes. I want to say right at the top, we've been doing this podcast, and obviously I love Dark Season 1, and we started this podcast. Season 2, I was still enjoying the show, but I was just getting so defeated. Season 2... Episode 6, where Michael has to go through it all over again, the suicide. I thought the show had broken me.
Marching straight to your own almost death. Well, I guess death, but long, agonizing 33-year-old death.
Yeah, it was so painful. And then Episode 7, The White Devil, I must have come across as a complete fool to anybody who's watched the whole series. The whole time, anytime anybody said The White Devil, I go, oh, they're talking about Noah. Oh, I hate Noah so much. The White Devil ends up being Claudia. And Claudia, just like so many people, just like Jonas the episode before, the future she's trying to stop of her dad dying, being found dead in his apartment, she ends up being the cause of. This show was just crushing me.
I don't know why they are still trying to change everything. And then half of the time they are trying to change something, they are recognizing that nothing can be changed.
But somehow, in some way, the absolute insanity, the absolute brilliance of that final episode, where what's comical is so much of it I knew had to happen. Obviously, the apocalypse was going to happen. Finding out that Task Force Clausen was responsible, of course, that idiot's involved somehow. Somehow it was so crazy, it was so tense, it was so many what the hell moments that I think I love Dark more than I've ever loved it before. After the insanity of Episode 8 of Season 2, the way it ended, it's one of the most incredible things I think I've ever seen on TV. It blew me away so much.
Bubba, the whole time has been Mr. Anti-Noah, and it turns out Noah is actually the victim of the whole series. The guy who, by all accounts, by Claudia's accounts, by Adam's accounts, does not know how to play the game. A, these people have a weird definition of game. B, poor Noah.
Oh, man. I'm glad you said that, because guess what? Let's get to our double L
loyal listeners
feedback right at the top. We have so many different places you can listen to our podcast. Somebody on YouTube and gave us some great feedback that you might like, Tidy. What's that first bit of feedback?
Well, Michael Engel says, Noah is awesome.
I love that you wrote that.
He wrote it on our YouTube.
He wrote it on our YouTube, and I have to say this with love. I still hate Noah. I'm glad he shot. Agnes shot him. I was like, good. To hell with Noah. You're right. Noah may be, as in some ways, certainly you can read it, that Noah is as much a victim as anybody else. But Noah seemed to relish in creeping people out. His just constant state was creepy. Young Noah is creepy. Old Noah is creepy. He did do terrible things, even if he was directed to do them, which technically we haven't seen. But the death of Eric, the redhead kid, way back in season 1, and of Yasin, the deaf child, in the middle of season 1, he was involved in that. He didn't seem to have any remorse. He didn't seem to have any remorse about blaming other people for what happened to Helga, even though Helga was really doing what he told him to do, and Helga was his prisoner for a bit as a child when he jumped forward to the 80s. And so I'm glad Noah's dead. I love this feedback. I love people who love Noah. I just don't love Noah. You said poor Noah. How do you feel about our favorite priest?
Well, I mean, I've got two things about Noah before I recognize that we're all feeling sorry for Noah. Number one, what seminary school did Noah go to? Is that where you go to become a priest? Monk school, seminary school? I don't know, but this has got to be the most interesting preschool you've ever gone to. So, second of all, Noah is the worst priest ever. Not only does he kidnap and kill boys, but then he fathers a child. I mean, you can't be more not a priest, but wearing a priest costume than Noah.
He loved Elizabeth. I really think he did love Elizabeth. I think he loved Charlotte, his daughter, who disappeared from him all these years.
So that is my second point around Noah. Do you think he kidnapped Yasin because he was Elizabeth's childhood crush?
He wanted to get rid of the competition.
Yasin had to go because Elizabeth had a crush on him.
Nothing else makes sense. That's got to be what it is, Tiny. You figured it out. Thank you so much. And I don't know how to pronounce your first name, Engel. Make? I just love that you love Noah, even if I still hate Noah. And I won't say no R.I.P. for Noah. We got a feedback from a double T.
Time traveler.
On our Facebook page. This is Nikki Powell. Nikki Powell had written some earlier feedback, and she wrote, looks like my first bit of feedback had spoilers. So sorry. If only I could travel back in time and prevent you from reading it. No, Nikki, you've seen this show well enough to know that we only read it because you went back in time to prevent us from reading it.
Let's keep reading Nikki's feedback, Bubba.
Okay. Oh, no. Nikki says, I agree with Tiny.
Woohoo!
Noah's aging process is puzzling. He was in his late teens or early 20s when the tunnel was first being dug. I have to be honest, if they're going to hook him up with Elizabeth in the post-apocalyptic time, I would hope he was a teen. Because Elizabeth is still, 14, you think, when she enters the bunker there at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope he's 17.
Worst priest ever, so you don't know.
That's a good point. But then she says, and the story suggests that his original timeline was the 1920s. Good point. That is what it suggests. Nikki, that should make him older than old Claudia, who's older than dirt. He should be aging even if he's time traveling, just like Claudia and Jonah. I'm confused. Well, Nikki Powell, we're all confused. Nobody should feel bad about being confused. The way I am going to interpret it is that he was born sometime, let's say, in the 1908, for example. In 1921, he's already been recruited to Adam. He's dug the tunnel, the infamous tunnel in the cave. So let's say he's 17 or whatever age in 1921. At a certain point, he gets sent forward all the way 100 years into the forward to 2020. There, he delivers his message to Jonas. Then he goes and gets in the bunker. He's 17 still, even though he's now in 2020. In the bunker, he meets Elizabeth, falls in love. Let's say they spend 20 years in the post-apocalyptic hellscape to get him to 2040 or something. So he's there 20 years, and so that would make him 37. But then his daughter is stolen from him, and he decides to join back on Team Adam. So in the bunker and in the 20 years he lived in the future, he joined Team Claudia. We know he was on Team Claudia at one point or another. You know what? I forget it. Throw up our hands. We have no idea. But thank you, Nikki, for such great feedback.
Yes, absolutely, Nikki. Thank you for agreeing with me.
We also got some feedback on Twitter, Tiny.
It's Amy at Amy Home Alone. She says, I fly to Germany on Monday, may end up in the caves. I want to pop in time and bring back some of those 50 dresses. Dress emoji, crying, laughing emoji.
Oh.
You know who has the best style is Agnes, I think.
Agnes in the 50s. That is a great look.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what Amy wants to dress up
Right.
as.
I would guess that's it. You know what else? The look I want to bring back that's a little bit consistent in the 50s and the 80s is the look that Bubba's putting into his new house, which is wood paneling.
Oh, hey, now that's... You know what? Jonas's and Hannah's and Michael's house, and I guess it was his adoptive mother, Inez's house before that, it's had wood paneling all this time. They
That's
never
right.
updated that house.
Hey, Bubba, if fanny packs can be back in style, so can wood paneling. Congratulations on your new home.
Thank you so much. Thank you, great Double T, Amy, at Amy Home Alone. We had more feedback from our original Double H.
Hannah Hater.
It's Monique is moving to the hashtag The Expanse, a really, really good show that's going to be on Amazon in December of 2019. To Wakanda is her official name. You can find her on Twitter at Haughty Marauder. And she responded to the official Dark Twitter account, and they're like, ugh, Hannah. And she said, yes, why is Hannah? I'll take my answer off the air. And then another person responded to her on Twitter. Belinda at Jet City Girl 1 on Twitter wrote, leave Hannah alone. She's the heart of the whole damn show.
Heart or something else. I don't know.
Tiny, we got to let our Double L loyal listeners know that after episode 7, and Claudia had this thing in the 80s where she fights with her dad, or her dad slips and cracks his head open and dies in his apartment. I said, somehow, I don't know how, I'm still on Team Claudia. And you said, I'm not on any team. I said, well, what team are you on? Come on, you got to be on some team. And you said, I'm on Team Hannah. How do you feel about what Hannah did to Ulrich? Oh, my God. She went to the 50s.
She left Ulrich no better off or worse off than she found him.
Oh, yeah.
You can't blame her.
But she was pretty much blackmailing him. Like, if somehow Ulrich did love her and was willing to abandon his wife and probably his family for her, do you think she would have somehow found a way to get Ulrich out of there? What do you think?
I honestly think Hannah was still mad at Ulrich from their last encounter when she slapped him. I don't think she went really with the intention of saving him, or at least that wasn't her primary intention.
Do you like that look she gave to young Egon? Oh, my God.
Well, I mean,
Egon's wife is fooling around with Agnes. He's got to get some love somewhere.
That's right.
Oh, boy, that could be really, really big trouble that we have to put up with in season 3.
I will say when we talk about teams, I think the only likable person left, because it looks like Jonas has turned into a complete moron, the only likable person left is Charlotte.
Oh, Charlotte is likable. You don't like Elizabeth? I kind of feel sorry for Elizabeth, what's happened to her.
I mean, who marries a priest?
I still almost like all the characters, even the ones who seem to make some terrible
And
mistakes.
don't forget, in the future, Elizabeth is hanging people for going to the dark matter.
Good point. Well, her kid was stolen from her. Do you think if your kid was stolen from you, Tiny, you could turn that quote-unquote dark?
Was her kid stolen from her? If her kid wasn't stolen from her, she would not be born. So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
how you can't be really mad.
Now, Tiny, we do have one more bit of feedback we got to get to. And to set it up, I want to say with the show Dark, we've always heard time is a flat circle, right? The beginning is the ending, and the ending is the beginning. So I'm going to set up this feedback before we bring it up. And to say that when you're in the podcast game, like I said earlier, some people listen to podcasts on YouTube. Some people download them from Apple Podcasts /iTunes. Some people get them on Stitcher. Some people get them on Spotify. There's so many different ways. And so we here at Double P Media, at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. We try to get our podcasts out there. We try to get them to every single place. And so because I'm putting these audio podcasts on YouTube, I thought to myself, well, I've got to visually show something on YouTube. So I've been doing the equivalent of a moving slideshow of images from the episodes we're talking about, and I just move them back and forth. And occasionally, because I'm just bored with the moving images, occasionally I've tried to do something. So on our last podcast, I made a collage where the image was half young Magnus's face and half old Magnus's face. And I thought, oh, wow, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to I'll make a screenshot of this and then I'll tweet that out to help promote the podcast, Winden Games, right? So I'm taking Netflix's images and I'm making a new image of half old Magnus, half young Magnus face. And I tweet that out. A Dark fan account grabs that image from me, and then they tweet out their own version of it. Then what happens next? One of the co-creators of Dark, a guy by the name of Baran Odar, grabs that image from this other person's Twitter account, and he puts it on his own personal Instagram account. He takes this image that I made, and he wrote this caption. He goes, shout out, he, might be German. He actually wrote shootout, but he meant shout out to our great casting director, Simone Barr, for making such great work. So the co-creator of the show took an image I made from his work.
That is cool, Bubba.
Puts it out on Instagram. And then, how do I find out about it? Because I'm not following the co-creator of Dark on Instagram. The original person who stole this image, he says, hey, the co-creator just, took this image that I tweeted out. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's my image.
Whose image is it, though, John?
Exactly
it's a Netflix image, your image. In which time and space is this image created?
This image is no different from Elizabeth and Charlotte. It has no beginning. It has no end. But that is the collage I made right there, Tiny, on our YouTube channel.
That is pretty cool. So go to the YouTube channel if you want to see this image.
Or we tweeted it out as well. So that's our final bit of feedback. The fact that we have the co-creator of the show stealing his own image back from us and putting it on Instagram was really, really great. Tiny, before we break down these episodes as best we can, in all the confusion we're going to have, it is time for the segment we've done all of season 2. And you know what that is?
Surprise family reveal?
Shocking family reveals. Dun, dun, dun. Now, Tiny, to recap, in our first shocking reveal, we revealed the truth, Tiny, that you and I are brother and sister. In our second shocking reveal, we revealed that the person we've referred to on the podcast occasionally as Cousin Jack is actually our nephew, and he's not our cousin.
That was shocking.
Our third shocking reveal was that you were in Japan the last 2 weeks when we released these podcasts. But I honestly think the fourth shocking family reveal, this final, just like the final episode of Dark this season 2, was absolutely crazy. I think this might be the most shocking family reveal of all. So to help promote the podcast and say if there's any news, I always go to Twitter occasionally and just search #Dark to see what people are talking about. And one of the first tweets to come up was none other than somebody known as @ArtTeacherAmy on Twitter. @ArtTeacherAmy on Twitter tweeted out, really excited about this t-shirt, and it's not even black. #InTheBunker, #Dark. #Sic Mundus Creatus Est. Now, do you see what t-shirt @ArtTeacherAmy is wearing? Do you recognize this t-shirt, Tiny? It is a t-shirt that matches the wallpaper in the bunker when they're torturing the children.
Oh my gosh, what are the odds?
But here's the biggest odd of all, Tiny. We call Cousin Jack cousin even though he's our nephew. @ArtTeacherAmy is actually our cousin.
Our cousin's wife, more specifically.
So here, one of the biggest Dark fans there is, who she's been on Facebook talking about Dark. Here she is tweeting about Dark, wearing a t-shirt that is the pattern of the wallpaper in the bunker when it's a torture chamber.
And not tagging either one of us in our famous Dark podcast.
@ArtTeacherAmy is our cousin, Tiny, and she loves Dark, and you're right, she did it, #Winden Games. What a shocking family reveal.
Shocking family reveal.
Okay, Tiny.
I'm relieved that wasn't more shocking. I thought Haughty Marauder was going to be related to us somehow.
Well, do not push your luck. We're going to 23andMe the whole town of Winden Games, and we're going to find out everybody's related to everybody. I should also point out at the very end of this episode, because almost, and I mean almost every single prediction I've ever made about this show has been wrong, I'm going to give my latest theory that's going to be wrong, unifying theory of Dark. But before we get to that, Tiny, you ready to get in these caves and talk about these episodes?
I don't think there's any way out.
Okay, so let's start chronologically, the very earliest we are, 1921. In these two episodes, our first scene in 1921 features Noah talking to Noah. He's talking to himself again. It's old Noah, priest Noah, talking to young, we hope, teenage Noah. And they're having this talk, and it's Noah saying things pretty much like, if I told you what I know now, you wouldn't do what I need you to do so I can be me now. Know that you're going to go do these things, and Adam will betray you at a certain point, but go and do them.
Do you really think he has to tell young self? I mean, he's already at Adam's house.
Who's to say? You're right. But you said porno. I said screw them both.
We're going to go eat dinner in maybe a half an hour. Do you think we need our older selves to tell us to go eat dinner?
Well, it might be things like don't order the meatloaf. In come Magnus and Franziska to get young Noah and to send him on what I believe is the first time Noah in his life ever travels in time and becomes a traveler. Magnus and Franziska, why don't we, because this is the older Magnus and Franziska, do you want to talk about how do you feel they did matching up the actors of those two with their future self?
I think the actors are great, and I actually like both of them a lot.
Do you remember why I'm smiling? Remember how when we did our very first podcast about Dark, I was like, and that great character like Magnus, and you were like, Magnus?
Yeah, Magnus is terrible, but I'm liking their love, hate, I don't know what relationship. They seem partners, and it's the one gleam of light that I think maybe Adam isn't evil. I don't really know. Who knows? But because they hang with him, it makes me think maybe he's not all bad. I don't know.
Tiny, that is also going to go to my unifying theory. That is very much how I'm leaning. I'm leaning that if Magnus and Franziska, if they're there, if they're down with this, then maybe Team Adam is the team to be on. The next thing that happens in 1921 is Noah is frustrated. He's found his daughter, it's Charlotte, and he thinks that Adam knew it this whole time. So he goes in to kill Adam, to shoot Adam, then to finally get his revenge on the person who screwed over his whole life. And he can't tell that the safety's on. He doesn't even know what a safety is, apparently. He tries to shoot Adam multiple times. Adam doesn't seem nervous at all because Adam knows this isn't where I die. Why does he know that's not where he dies? Because he's seen what he's going to do to Martha in a bit and knows he can't die then. Possibly that's it, or possibly he knows something even further down the line.
I tell you what, these people's memories are very strong. I mean, I can't keep together the order of things. Watching Dark, can you imagine if you time traveled all your whole life? I mean, and you wake up looking like Adam at whatever age he is and say, oh, this is the day that I shoot Martha. I wouldn't remember that.
Oh, if Martha's the love of your life, I think you might remember that specific day. You're right.
Good point.
A lot of other stuff I wouldn't remember. Okay, so Noah is perplexed. He's like, what's going on? I need to kill this person who's ruined my life. In walks Magnus and Franziska. Also in walks Noah's sister Agnes. She, in an earlier episode this season, had talked about how she was on Team Claudia. She used to be on Team Adam, but lost her way, and she wanted back in with Adam. This ending, if this at all happened in chronological order, it seems like Agnes has joined Team Adam again, and she shoots and kills Noah, her brother. Now, Tiny, I don't want you to get any ideas about shooting a brother, but how did you feel when Noah got?
I just feel like you have to, I mean, Noah's face that basically everything he's ever done was for naught. And, back to Nikki Powell and how she agreed with me, looks like Noah and Agnes both have good genes on aging.
That is true. Agnes is a very lovely actress. She was actually in one of those recent Superman movies as a villain of Krypton. But, she's certainly, her 50s fashion is very impressive. I'm not sure about her suit in 1921. Not quite the same, but that pretty much ends our time in 1921, except, of course, Magnus and Franziska help Adam into his suit because he's going to enter the guard particle and we assume go to 2020 to kill Martha. A final image we see, speaking of Magnus and Franziska in 1921, is them holding their hands as the guard particle goes crazy. I'll say this part of my grand unifying theory. We talked about this a bit after you watched the episode, Tiny. Franziska cannot be born unless Charlotte, her mother, is born. her mother Charlotte was born because her sister Elizabeth met this guy Noah and had a kid some point. Based on the evidence we've seen, Elizabeth and Noah meet because they're trapped in an apocalyptic bunker together. If you're Magnus and you love Franziska, does this mean I need the apocalypse to happen, or my love of my life, Franziska, will never be born? Because that's what I think. I think as terrible as this apocalypse is, since it led to his love of his life, Franziska, being born, it's like he needed it to happen.
But what kind of life are they living?
That is a great question. I have no idea. But it's this weird thing of so many characters have been trying to stop the apocalypse. This can't happen. The end of the world, they've called it. And yet some characters owe their very lives to the apocalypse. And so it's a real weird dilemma that people are having. So that's it for 1921. Did you have any thoughts about the time period 1921 across season 2?
Well, a big mystery for me is not necessarily 1921, but when you talk about Charlotte being born,
right,
I always wonder. Helgi is allegedly the father of Charlotte's husband.
Peter, yeah, the psychiatrist, right, the therapist.
Who is Peter's mother? That just feels like another bomb yet to be dropped.
It sure does. I would say, tying to 1921, theoretically, we saw young Agnes, and we definitely met young Noah in 1921. How did they get all involved in this? Agnes, we've talked about her so much, it's probably good to remember, Agnes is the mother of Tronte. Tronte gave birth to Ulrich, and Ulrich obviously married Katharina and had the 3 kids.
And we don't know who Tronte's father is either.
It's been implied he was a man of the cloth, but he was not a religious man at all, I guess is the best way. We should almost go back and watch that scene, but there's a part of me that seems to think that Agnes seems to like women. Is Tronte really her child? And or is it possible Jonas fools around with Agnes and he/Adam is the father? I don't know. It's very confusing. All right, well then let's get to 1954. This time period, I should say, only appeared in episode 7, The White Devil. So to go through that, Egon and Inez's father, Officer Kahnwald, are examining old Claudia's body. She's been found in the woods. They think Claudia was possibly Ulrich's accomplice. They're like, well, if Ulrich's been in prison this whole time, how could Helga just suddenly show back up? Well, maybe he had an accomplice. Maybe it was this woman. Claudia's body is radioactive. Certainly being around the God particle, that'll do that to you.
Well, she's in and out of it, right? I guess that's why Adam looks the way he looks.
Oh, great point. Yeah. It's definitely rough on the body. To find out if this mysterious woman is the accomplice to Ulrich, young Egon goes to see Helga. Helga calls Claudia the White Devil. And once again, this blew my mind because I've assumed Noah was the end-all evil person. But no, Helga says Claudia is the White Devil. Now, I slightly hinted that who the White Devil was shocked me because I got to see this episode before you did, Tiny. How did you feel finding out that Claudia, the person who we've kind of been on our team for a long time, was the White Devil?
You told me you were shocked, and so between you telling me you were shocked and me watching the episode, I kind of figured out that it was Claudia.
Oh, so crazy. This is another important line in my grand, dark, unifying theory. That will be completely wrong. But Helga tells young Egon, the White Devil, what's going on? And Helga says, she wants to kill us, all of us. That's an important part to think about. The next thing that happens to 1954, we've already touched on in a bit. Everybody's favorite, Hannah, shows up in young Egon's office. When Egon's like, oh, what's your name? Do you remember the name she gave Tiny?
Katharina.
How terrible. Egon takes her to this place where poor Ulrich's being kept and drugged and probably beaten. Ulrich, once he finally recognized her, he's so happy to see somebody he recognizes, somebody from his time. Hannah asks Ulrich, who would you choose, Katharina or Hannah? You knew that he was honest here, Tiny. You knew that he would choose his family. We've talked about that on previous podcasts. Oh, my Lord. When Ulrich sees where it's going, it's too late. He tries to say, no, I love you, I'll do anything you want. It's too late. Hannah tells young Egon, that's not my husband. They go back to Egon's office and share a smoke, and she kind of smiles at him, and he smiles at her. Of course, Inez's father had earlier said, well, Egon, you can't just work and then go home and be miserable at home. Maybe you should find a lover on the side. Does this imply that young Egon is going to fool around with everybody's favorite bit of trouble, Hannah?
I mean, I think that is where all signs point. Hannah does not seem very discriminating.
Well, yeah, now that Ulrich's off the table and Michael's off the table, who knows?
I mean, it sounds like finding a guy is her number one goal in life, and so why not go for Egon? You like Egon.
Tiny, let's think of a terrible idea. If Egon and Hannah fool around, could it be possible that they would have a child? That they could be the parents of maybe Tronte, maybe Noah and Agnes? Peter, great point. Now, there'd have to be some time travel there, too, because Peter was definitely not born in the 50s.
Right, darn it.
But he could still be...
Benny!
Benny and Wohler, that's a good point. Benny is the sex worker who has the trailer, and Wohler is the one-eyed cop. They're brothers. And so, yeah. Oh, my God. Hannah is one of the most fascinating characters for sure. And I guess I should say that how am I able to like all these characters when they do so many terrible things? We don't talk about the style too much. This show has great montages, and episode 7, The White Devil, began with a great montage of old, creepy, scarred Adam looking across the room and seeing the love of his life, young Martha. Hannah is thinking of Ulrich, the man she loves. Young Martha, is thinking of Jonas. Katharina, interesting, isn't thinking of Ulrich, she's thinking of Mikkel. What's comical, we even had Task Force Clausen. Looking at a photo, we later found out it's his dead brother, or her missing brother, maybe I should correctly say. And so all these characters, they're doing it out of love. And so Hannah maybe, realizes that it's not love anymore with Ulrich and keeps going to the dark side. But that's how I'm able to wrap my head around liking all these terrible, terrible things that these people do.
Yeah, I still only like Charlotte, maybe Francesca and Magnus a little bit.
Okay, all right. Let's get to your favorite time period you've always said, the 80s, 1987. Oh, boy, 87 was a great year.
Wake me up.
All righty. Now, this one's going to be really tough to deal with because so much is happening. Claudia, in a previous episode, she'd given a God particle to somebody there at the power plant and says, give me some information about this. So she reads the report about it. Her secretary comes in. Boy, the French never get to meet with Claudia. She keeps putting off the meeting. Her secretary comes in and she's like, what day is it? When Claudia finds out the day, she realizes, oh no, this is the day of Egon's death. Egon's going to the hospital for chemo. She's like, I want to go. She loves her father. Of course, it's going to end up really bad. Egon, of course, is shook at this point. Egon knows that something crazy has been going on with time travel and that he has missed kind of the point of it. He asks Claudia if he was a good police officer. He's talking about Back to the Future, and he knows that somehow time travel is involved with Mads and Helga. Egon tells Claudia about Ulrich, the man from the future, and Mads and Mikkel. Egon is talking to himself. He's like, why is Ulrich always running to the caves? Of course, Claudia knows that the caves are loaded with that waste/God particle in there, and so she's getting scared. They get back to his house. She's like, grab your pills and let's get out of here. He's trying to put things together when he realizes Claudia knows about time travel. She has not been willing to be honest with him.
I just don't really understand why she got so upset, though. I mean, she just got so defensive. Obviously anybody who calls 911 and said they came from the future, which later we can talk about Charlotte's approach on sharing information with people, is a little bit non-strategic.
It is so crazy. They fight because Egon wants to call. He's like, you know something. In their struggle over the phone, Egon falls. He hits his head. Claudia's about to call an ambulance and get some help for her father when she remembers the words her old self told her about how we would all have to make sacrifices. But if she did what was right, she could save Regina. And she loves her daughter too. Egon's last words is to call his daughter the White Devil. Oh, that was powerful. Oh, that was crazy. it was devastating to me as an Egon fan.
Again, I feel like she just overreacted. I think Egon's a little bit naive to think that, once you realize there's time travel coming on, you call the 5-0. I mean, that seems like a really naive approach to how to handle the situation. And I guess it speaks to how he and Claudia just weren't close. They weren't close enough to kind of share this knowledge with one another.
It ends up creating a bizarre paradox where Egon saw Claudia, his daughter's dead body, back in 1954. But then Claudia saw her father, Egon's dead body, in 1987. They both seen each other dead. Oh, how star-crossed, how tragic this poor family has fallen. The Tiedemann family has had it pretty rough.
But keep in mind, Egon doesn't say. Now, he met the White Devil with the different colored eyes, and when he's trying to ask her about time travel, he doesn't ask her if that's her. But maybe he's just in shock or surprised or anything like that.
I know. R.I.P. Not for Noah, but for old Egon. The final bit of 1987, Claudia goes home. She's a wreck. She's got her father's blood on her hands. She tries to wipe it off when suddenly somebody's opening the door to her house. It isn't her daughter Regina, who left a note that she's sleeping at a friend's place. Who walks in? Jonas, youngest Jonas, time-traveling Jonas. He walks in, and he's like, listen, you've told me everything. She's like, how did you get in here? You gave me a key. You mean she gave me a key? Older me gave you the key. Jonas has apparently spent a lot of time with Claudia since theoretically a year, because his father committed suicide back in 2019. For the past year, he's lived his life. Now he's going to get young Claudia, and he's on a mission to quote-unquote do what's right. They go to the cave, or actually first I should say, they go to the cave which has all the waste in it and grab a bit of the God particle for the time machine. Then they go to the tunnel, in shock upon shock, and I don't think this was much of a shock. It appears that Jonas restarts the tunnel, which is how it possibly got started in the very first place.
How could you possibly know what the right move was? I guess they're just all doing their best. And I guess Jonas says it at some point during one of these episodes where he says, I gotta try.
Right, they do have to try. But boy, the trying is the toughest part. I'm going to leave 2020 till the end, Tiny, just because it's so incredible. But let's get to our last time period, 2053. Elizabeth, old Elizabeth now at this point, she's digging through this buried area near a downed helicopter. She hears drones flying overhead. She pulls out a picture of her family, and I thought, oh, that's so sweet, that she misses Francesca and Charlotte and her dad, Peter. And then she digs deeper and finds more photos. And yes, she finds out there's a picture of me. Well, she doesn't maybe...
A beautiful family.
Right, she maybe doesn't realize it, but she finds there's a picture of me and Noah and my child. And we see that, and we're like, well, wait a minute. Noah's child is Charlotte, and oh, my God, no.
So here's a question. Does she know that Charlotte is her mother? She just knows she had a baby, and the baby disappeared. Maybe she doesn't know Charlotte is her mother.
Well, I'm just going to get preposterously technical. She knows Charlotte is her mother. I'm not sure she knows that Charlotte is her daughter.
That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean.
There is the most ridiculous meme going around on Twitter. If you search dark like I always do, it's hashtag dark. But then there's a picture of Charlotte and Elizabeth, and underneath it, it's a picture of the chicken or the egg. Which came first? How terrible. Elizabeth sees her old self. She digs up her old wolf hat, her old fox hat that she used to wear. She decides, you know what, I've got to do something. She goes into the tunnel, which she's been hanging people for going in there. She sees the God particle. It's going crazy because at this point in time, across all timeline, it's the apocalypse. It opens up a window. She sees her mom, and we'll get to that in 2020. Anything about old Elizabeth you feel like you should say, Tiny? You mentioned we never found out about the character we've jokingly been called Scarface, her lieutenant. We don't know anything about her.
Yeah, and that... Apparently, some other people must have survived because there was only 4 people in the bunker. So I wonder where her dad is, number one.
Just to correct, there were 5 people in the bunker. There was Peter and Elizabeth, middle-aged Claudia and Regina, and Noah. So 5 people were in the bunker. But you're right. This futurescape appears that not everybody died. if we think back to Jonas in the future, he came across tombstones or crosses for Alexander, Wohler, the one-eyed cop, and Martha. But yeah, so tough. Any guesses who you think this Scarface character is, who her lieutenant is, Tiny?
I don't know. I did have a guess a while ago. I thought it was Francesca for a while ago, without red hair, just older. Only because the Scarface character knows sign language. So it must be somebody who knows sign language, which would really limits the scope of people.
Yeah, I'm quite positive that in season 3 we're going to find out the identity of the woman with the scar across her face in the future. But I have no idea. I'm just so torn as to who. I know she's going to be somebody important too, but who? No idea. All right, Tiny, let's you and I go 1 year into the future, 2020. So much happens here. It's almost impossible to describe it, but we're going to try. Listeners, feel free to laugh at us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram.
Well, we've been right about so much so far.
Right. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/PHQ. In the YouTube comments, make fun of us. Tell us what you think. This is just crazy. So 2020 starts with Hannah stealing the time machine from her son, stranger version of Jonas, and she goes to the cave, and then she travels to the 50s. We're done with her. Stranger Jonas wakes up without the time machine. Charlotte found out that the creepy priest she's been searching for is Noah, her father. And Noah, her father, told her that the world ends tomorrow. Only people in the bunker survived. One other important moment is that Noah told Charlotte that her mother was alive, and that gives her so much strength. Charlotte goes to the police station, and she sees she can't find anybody. Task Force Clausen has gone to the plant. Wohler's there. Wohler comes up and he's like, listen, there's something I got to tell you. I helped Alexander bury nuclear waste in cement. What's hilarious is Charlotte's like, yeah, big, we got bigger problems.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your confession. Move on.
All right. Magnus, Franziska, and Elizabeth tell Charlotte and Peter, so this is, once again, before this point, that, hey, there's a time machine. Martha tells them about Jonas, and she means stranger Jonas being back, just like Bartos told them he'd be back. Franziska brings up her father fooling around with Benny, and she's like, wait a minute, you guys knew about the time machine? This family's messed up. Dad's been screwing Benny. To hell with it. And so Franziska leaves. Magnus leaves after her. That explains why they're not in the bunker there at the end. Let's get to everybody's possibly least favorite character, Task Force Clausen.
Speak for yourself. I mean, this guy gets to the bottom of things.
He doesn't get to the bottom of anything. So Clausen, like I said, he's been looking at a picture of him and another man when he was much younger. And it turns out this picture of him and his brother. His brother disappeared. His brother, Alexander Kohler. And so he's been searching for his brother all this time because his brother disappeared in 1986. Suddenly, out of the blue, he gets a letter sent to him. If you want to find your brother, and it, of course, has some, mysterious poem in there too, but it pretty much says, if you're looking for your brother, look in Winden. And so that's why Clausen volunteered to be Task Force Clausen and get to Winden. And he doesn't really care about any of the missing kids that are part of the Winden trouble. He's been trying to find his brother.
He's looking at the elephant differently.
He sure is. And one thing he's found is that Alexander took Regina's last name in the marriage, so he's Alexander Tiedemann. And he's like, oh, wait a minute. Alexander originally said his name was Alexander Kohler. No wonder he was so hard to find. Aha. He looks at the documentation, and apparently Alexander Kohler is supposed to be 5'8", like his brother was 5'8", but this Alexander is only 5'6". Where are those 2 missing inches?
Yes. Can't get anything past Inspector Clausen.
Definitely not an elephant that big. So he throws Alexander in jail. Terrible end for Alexander. Definitely proving one of my theories wrong. I always thought Alexander had traveled for the future. That's why he was shot when he showed up in 87. No, he had just traveled from another town, apparently, and taken on this identity to cover his tracks.
I think there may be more to the story there.
Oh, I do too. Great point, Tiny. I do too. But that's all we have to go on now. So, Task Force Clausen, he gets a search warrant for the plant because Alexander's obviously been faking his identity. This is insane. Oh, insane. And so they head to the plant. We'll hold off on what he does at the plant because it's so absolutely terrible. It brings about the apocalypse. One thing you would have to say is that whoever wrote that letter, hey, Clausen, you want to find your missing brother, look in Winden. It's probably somebody in the future who knew that Clausen had to be there to cause the apocalypse.
What's the point of a search warrant if you were not going to open every single door and every single porthole in the nuclear power plant?
You're going to break into concrete, which they said was the cooling water for a nuclear power plant? That's the craziest, most unsafe thing I've ever heard of. This guy doesn't remember Chernobyl, and he was alive during Chernobyl. All right, so let's go back to Stranger Jonas. His mom has stolen the time machine, and so he's distraught. He doesn't know what to do when there's a knock on the door. Who is it? It's Martha. Stranger Jonas lets her in. This is a big shock. It's the love of his life right there, but he can't tell the love of his life. Yes, he can tell. She starts talking about looking at him and saying, oh, I've got deja vu. And he repeats, because Martha had mentioned deja vu back in season 1, episode 1. And so sure enough, Stranger Jonas says, yeah, it's like a glitch in the Matrix, a message from the beyond, which is exactly what he said in season 1. He asks her if she found the pendant because he returned the pendant to her. What would you do, Tiny, if you're a high school girl and your high school boyfriend suddenly showed up as a 40-something-year-old man?
I think you have to pass. I think that's going to be a hard pass. I mean, obviously, Martha's just one of those girls, I guess, who always has to have a boyfriend.
Well, she always has one. That's what sure.
I'm saying.
Who shows up at the absolute worst time? Katharina. Katharina is going to see Hannah to get some truth about, once again, Michael. And she sees her daughter there with creepy old Jonas, her grandson. Tell her the truth. Tell her the truth. Martha tells her mom about the time machine. Oh, it is all blowing up in everybody's face. The next day, Stranger Jonas, he knows the apocalypse happens this day. And if we kind of take time at a certain point, he knows that Martha's going to be shot. Why do we know Stranger Jonas knows Martha's going to be shot? He looks over at that spot on the floor. And there's nothing there early in episode 8 when he looks over there at the spot of the floor. But he's looking at the spot where Martha will fall. And so he knows she's going to get shot. He knows his older self, Adam's going to shoot Martha. So he's got to change the past. He's got to fix the past. So he goes to Martha's house, holds a gun to her, and says, listen to me. I'm going to lock you in the bunker. You're going to do this. This is the only way you're going to survive.
I think there should have been some more instruction.
Oh, my God. Yes, he should have thought this through.
Because if he had just told her, hey, there's going to be an explosion, when Peter and Elizabeth get there, maybe she would have believed him.
Stranger Jonas, at gunpoint, locks the love of his life, Martha, in the bunker. He's telling her things like, listen, Martha, you don't know how tough it's been all these years. Martha, you kept me alive, he says. That also ties into my unifying theory. Stranger Jonas returns home. He's got the gun. He's there because he knows Adam's going to show up and he's going to kill his older self, Adam, and end this once and for all. But instead of Adam showing up at that moment, young Noah shows up. Young Noah preaches that, stranger, listen to me. You're going to be the savior. You're going to be Adam. You're going to save them all. Stranger Jonas is like, forget that. I don't want to hear that. And then young Noah gives Stranger Jonas a letter from Martha. Can you explain what this letter could even be?
There's absolutely no telling other than to tell him kind of the same thing that old Noah told young Noah. Stick with the plan.
For some reason, Stranger Jonas believes it. Young Noah tells him that he's got to go save Bartosz, Franziska, and Magnus. And so Stranger Jonas takes the time machine and leaves. Then, another important point. Young Noah tells Stranger Jonas, after he saves Bartosz, Franziska, and Magnus, he's then got to save Agnes and Noah, as the prophecy foretells, so Martha can live. We saw him at the end of the episode save Bartosz, Franziska, and Magnus from the apocalypse. Any thought of how Stranger Jonas is going to save Agnes and Noah?
Have we seen Bartosz later, older?
We'll get to that in a bit, too, Tiny.
It might be the unifying theory coming together.
Well, I think that's one of my predictions. Of my many Bartosz predictions, I think that I have one prediction of older Bartosz that is true.
Hashtag obsessed with Bartosz.
All right. Magnus brings the time machine home. Martha tells Magnus their dad and Mikkel are from another time. Okay, that happened too. Bartosz goes to see his mom. And even though this is 8 months later, he's like, Mom, what was your mother like? Was she a good mother? Because guess what? She came here 8 months ago. She's not dead. She's not missing. She came here. Regina is so defeated with cancer. Her husband's locked away in prison. What's she going to do? But Bartosz gives her the photo of her younger self and her mom from the 80s. Then Bartosz leaves and he says, but I'll be back. Don't worry. Famous last words from anybody. Regina calls the police station. I want my husband Alexander free out of this jail. When the camera starts panning, and I go, there it's panning for one reason and one reason only. It's her mom, but her mom from the same age in the 80s. How is this possible? But she's under chemo, she's under stress. And her mom grabs her and brings her to the bunker.
I'm just wondering, and we talked about this, I am wondering the benefit of bringing a cancer patient to the bunker where they will survive the blast.
Right. But
and then have no cancer treatment.
Yes, that's a great point. Poor Regina's had it rough. Everybody's had it rough. Everybody in that Tiedemann family seems to get cancer of one type or another. Let's go through Katharina. Do you like Katharina? How are you feeling about this mom who's desperate to find her youngest son, Mikkel, almost at the expense of her husband and her 2 other children?
Katharina, I understand and appreciate her drive, but she seems like Noah. She doesn't know how to play the game. A more moronic version of Noah.
So she'd already been once to the Jonas's house to find Hannah and found her daughter there. The next day she goes back to the house. And before Stranger Jonas is there, she goes up to his room and she finds all those maps of the caves and the infamous ball lantern. She seems very determined to do something when what does she do? She sees a photo album of Michael. And she flips through it, and there's her son in the arms of another woman, Inez Kahnwald. There's her son going through his life. There's her son graduating from high school. Stranger Jonas returns. She's like, you shouldn't be here, grandson. You shouldn't exist. It's your fault. I'm going to go get him and bring him back here. And Jonas is like, you can't. I exist, so you can't bring him back. She doesn't accept it. But he tells her, hey, it's my younger self has just reopened the passage in the cave. She said the passage that Mikkel went through, later, I'm gone, and she heads to the cave. She is there while past and future are connected. Any guesses what could happen to Katharina? What time she might have been zapped to?
There is absolutely no telling in my mind. Or maybe she's Helgi's mother.
No. That evil woman, Helgi's mother in the 50s.
Oh, not Helgi's mother. Who was I saying? Peter's mother.
All right, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
She could have a 4th child, is what you're saying. Because I actually do love all these characters, I've been trying to think, well, what would be a happy ending for Katharina? Well, what if she was sent back in time to the 80s, and then she decides to live there and be like an aunt?
Bubba, do you think this show is heading in the direction of a happy ending?
I'm holding on to hope, Tiny. I really am. Peter and Elizabeth can't get in touch with Charlotte. They can't get in touch with Franziska. They've been told that only people in the bunker survive. Peter grabs his daughter. He signed languages to her. It's going to all be okay. Boy, he has not been paying attention. And they head to the bunker, and they're in there. Youngest traveler Jonas, comes out of the cave with Claudia. He tells Claudia to bring the machine to the bunker. He's got to find his mom and Martha. He goes home. He returns home. And who shows up to his home? Somebody who should be locked in the bunker if his older self knew any better. But Martha. Martha ran out of the bunker. Martha, why'd you do it? She's there. They engage in a very passionate kiss. And they both know the truth at this point, Tiny.
So is she back at the house looking for older Jonas? She doesn't know younger one is back. So is she like no harm, no foul on the gun hold up?
I wish I knew. I think there's a part of her that keeps hearing Jonas will return, and she is thinking that it'll be her Jonas, and it is her Jonas in so many ways. They kiss. How do you feel about this kiss? Call me crazy, just as I've somehow liked all the characters. I want a happy ending for these 2 crazy kids. This aunt and her nephew.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it was the right move for the show, but I can't say that it's something that I want to see as Jonas marry his aunt and live happily ever after.
Jonas is there with Martha. They've finally been reunited. Jonas is finally back in his time frame when who comes in? Did this shock you when Adam walked in, Tiny?
It did shock me.
It shocked the living daylights out of me. And then Adam is there, and Adam kills Martha. He tells his younger self, some pain you can't forget. You will carry this pain for the rest of your life. There's an incredible moment as Jonas is crying. There's so much blood coming out. Around the same time, there's this great montage set to a cover of Arcade Fire's My Body is a Cage. And so many things are happening, but the most devastating thing of all, with the apocalypse happens. Clausen, so desperate to find his brother. Oh, wait, this was the plant. This cement block was from the 80s when my brother disappeared. Break it open. The dumbest idea ever. Charlotte shows up. She's smart enough. What are you doing? Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Woller's there. The God particle comes alive. And like it did at the exact same end of season 1, they are able to see a rip across time. Charlotte, in 2020, is able to see 33 years into the future to 2053 and see her daughter Elizabeth. Elizabeth sees her mom and naturally does a sign because she loves her mom. The two reach across time to touch each other and apparently blow everything to hell. And as the blast is going, Jonas is still heart destroyed at seeing his love, Martha, shot and dead. The house is rattling from the shock when who appears behind him? Martha from Earth 2.
Is Martha older, younger, or just different?
She says, I'm not who you think I am. Jonas, of course, has had his old world rocked so many times, but this might take the cake. He's like, wait a minute. What time are you from? She says, it's not what time I'm from.
What world am I from? I think that's what she says.
Tiny, Back to the Future 2 showed us multiple versions of different times.
You know, when she came in acting like she owned the place, she actually reminded me of Doc at the end of Back to the Future. And Marty says, Doc, we need plutonium. You know, we have to stay on the roads. And with a lot of confidence, Doc says, roads. There are no roads where we're going. I mean, she just had a confidence to her where he's on the floor basically in pieces. She comes in and just takes control of the entire situation.
Tiny, are you ready for a season 3 which features different versions of Earth, alternate timelines? This show is so complicated. I loved it. It blew me away like no tomorrow. But oh my God, if we thought this show was confusing already, it's beyond confusing. It's insane. It's completely insane. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. This was a great, incredible.
So, Bubba, are we going to hear the unifying theory, or are you going to have our own cliffhanger here at Winden's Caves?
Well, before I tell you my unifying theory, Tiny, you've kind of already hit around this several times. What team are you on, if any team? Are you on Team Jonas? Are you on Team Stranger Jonas? Are you on Team Claudia? Are you on Team Noah? I mean, who are you rooting for? All these people have made such tragic mistakes. Any thoughts?
I'm on Team Adam.
What? What do you mean? Adam just shot Martha in the gut. He killed her.
It had to happen. It already happened.
Well, Tiny, I agree with you. I am on Team Adam.
Wow.
As terrible as everything is, I think Adam knows everything. I think he knows all that's happened in all these timelines. And Adam is Jonas. We saw him look at Martha. We saw him cry over Martha. He loves Martha, but he had to kill her. Why he had to kill her? Well, this goes to my classic thing about Elizabeth and Charlotte, and this is my unifying theory. Francisca and Charlotte and Elizabeth, they're in this loop, and the only way they exist is this loop. There's no way that you can kill the loop and those three can live without time travel, just as Jonas couldn't live without time travel. What did Helgi, young Helgi in the 50s, say when Egon went to him and say, hey, do you know this woman? Yeah, she's the White Devil. She wants to kill us all. What I think, even though I've liked Claudia, I love Jonas, I think that if they try to stop time, they are going to kill everybody. And that's why she's called the White Devil. If she succeeds and stops all this pain, it's going to kill everybody. And so there's this simple problem. I want to describe it without dark. But let's say you love somebody with all your heart. You love them with all your heart, and they get killed. And you love them so much you invent a time machine to go back and prevent them from being killed. Now, the time machine happens to only work in 33-year increments. So you're sent back well to before she was born. But because you were sent back to before she was born, you do something, maybe like a Back to the Future thing. You save somebody from being hit by a car. Oh, wait a minute. The person I saved from being hit by this car is the love of my life's father. If I hadn't gone back in time to save the love of my life's father, she would never be born. But of course, I only went back in time because she was killed and I was so distraught. Well, the only way she'll exist is if she's killed. I have to kill her. That is my unifying theory. I think all these people, all these characters we come to get frustrated by, love, to go crazy, I think they all exist because of time travel in some way. And I think Adam, that's why he keeps making things happen the way they happen. Even this alternate Earth somehow is part of the pattern, I think. It's terrible, everything we've seen, but I am officially on Team Adam. So now, Tiny, how do you feel about that unifying theory?
I mean, I think it's the only theory.
It could possibly be the only thing that pulls us together. So now let's get back to speculation, which we really, well, that was speculation, but let's get to some more speculation. People on the internet have found, of course, the classic group photo of Adam's team. You said this didn't seem like the type of people who would have a group photo, but here is the group photo there. If you're on our YouTube site, you can watch it. You can go to our YouTube site and see this right now. Admittedly, you can't go to youtube.com/PHQ. We apologize for that. Just search Winden Caves on podcast on YouTube will come up. So here is this image. We know Adam is sitting in the front. We can recognize Noah and Agnes to one side of his shoulder. To the other side, we know it's Franziska and Magnus. Some people online have looked at these people and tried to figure out who they could all be. Well, the person in the kind of the front row in the far left-hand side, we've seen before. We've seen him in the tunnel digging with young Noah. We saw him get killed in the first episode of season 2. I said then that because I had always thought Bartos was Noah, and then, well, okay, that's not Noah. I thought this old guy was Bartos. So people on the internet are predicting that that is Bartos in this photo, Tiny. And that would mean Bartos got killed by young Noah in 1921 after he helped carve the tunnel. You didn't like that idea now. Looking at it in this photo, how do you feel?
Well, he does resemble young Bartos, for sure. So I would say that is affirmative. I would like it if Bartos had some other relevance to the show, or we were able to see why he got in that position of digging the tunnel in the first place, a little bit more about him.
Now, over the shoulder of Bartos and Magnus, there's a woman. People have said this woman, if she looks like anybody on the show, she kind of sort of looks like Elizabeth.
I'm also going to go with that. She's very pretty. She's blonde. She's in the back.
Now, over Magnus and Franziska's shoulders in this Sic Mundus photo are two people. Now, online, this is all speculation. We don't know. Online, people have guessed that it's Doris and Inez. Who is Doris, Tidy? Can you even remember? They don't say her name too much.
Is that Helgi's mother? Who is that?
Doris is young Egon's wife, who's fooling around with Agnes. Doris, as you've mentioned before, we only see her in the 50s. She doesn't appear in the 80s with old Egon. Even if they got divorced, we don't see her. Is it possible she joined the Sic Mundus crowd? Another character over Franziska and Magnus's shoulder is, the people online have guessed, is Inez, Jonas's grandmother. But I don't think this looks like either version of Inez to me. There's a man directly behind Adam who people have guessed is this Peter.
That feels like a stretch to me.
Yeah, I could kind of see it, like an old senior citizen Peter. On the far right of the photo, behind Noah, there's someone with these weird mutton chops. And someone has guessed that it's Tannhaus the Clockmaker. Is it any chance that senior citizen Tannhaus the Clockmaker? I don't know. The Clockmaker in the 80s was pretty old. What do you think, Tanya?
He doesn't look like it to me. I don't know.
Then the final person is Helga's mom, Greta. Greta, they say, is behind Agnes and Noah. Now, Greta, I've always hated. I've always been so tough on Helga's mother. I don't think that's her. Admittedly, we only see her in the 50s timeline, too.
I think the best guesses in these pictures are Elizabeth and Bartosz.
Yeah, I think that really looks like them. How would Elizabeth travel from this? Well, I could answer my own question. We see her in the bunker in 2020 as the apocalypse happens, but in the bunker, we know the time machine is there. So who's to say they had to immediately then spend the next 33 years in post-apocalyptic Winden? Who's to say they didn't use that time machine to travel back? Tiny, we've done it. We've done the first season of Dark. We've done the second season of Dark. Anything at all that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
I think we have covered absolutely everything we could possibly cover.
I want to thank all our double T's.
Time travelers.
Who are true double L's.
Loyal listeners.
And they can be double H's.
Hannah haters.
Or they could be double B's.
Bartosz's
Boys.
Boys.
Or they could be double M's.
Magnus's
Men.
Men.
They could be Francisca's
friends.
Right. I'm saying friends of Francisca. I'm saying we want to thank you guys for listening, downloading the podcast. It's going to be a long year. Is there any way, Tiny, that in a year from now we'll be able to just jump into season 3 without going through all this insanity ever again?
Well, I finally got it now. I feel like into episode 7, second season, I've got everybody straight. So I will just look at the photos, and I think I'm going to come together on this.
Everybody, please reach out to us. We don't have any ads. We only do it because we love talking about Dark with you. And you don't even have to be a family member of ours to join in. Reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/PHQ, on Twitter @PHQ, on Instagram @PHQ, YouTube. I'm sorry, it's just messed up. Just go to YouTube, search Winden Caves, you'll find us. Thank you so much. Follow, subscribe, like, and share. Just like Martha, just like alternate Martha, bring a friend.
All right, well, that's our
final journey in this cave. Tiny, it's time to get out of this cave and go get something to eat.
Let's hope it's still there. Where are the older people telling us what to do next?